question. Has anyone thought about the impacts that all this conference changing is having on the bowl lineups? You know, the ACC, let's say, has a lineup set up where their champion goes to a certain bowl and the number 2 goes to a bowl. But if I was a bowl like with the Pac-12, I wouldn't want, say, an Oregon State or Washington State as a champion, since UCLA and USC are gone, and God forbid Oregon and Washington leave. Yeah, I'm just wondering what ramifications that'll have with the TVs and the bowl networks.
Well,
thanks.
I'm sure there'll be some sort of reshuffling, but right now they barely have enough teams to fill out the amount of bowls. I mean, they have to make certain things where, okay, if your grades are good, you can go at 5 and 7 some years because there's so many bowl games. So I don't think if you're worried about the traditional bowl lineup as it's been and ever expanding with, games in the Bahamas and everywhere else, I mean, eventually you're just going to take who you can get. I do think eventually that system will probably morph and change into something else if the playoff expands. But
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you're really asking that, though. You're asking, like, if the Pac-12 is linked into bowls, like, how does that affect, if all these conferences are changing, how does that affect your bowl affiliation? That's how I took it, at least.
Yeah, but my point is I don't think they really
they'll figure it out.
Be a point to be like, oh, we're upset about it. Okay,
each conference
we'll find somebody else to go to your bowl game.
Each conference will have tie-ins to 5, 6, 7, 8 bowls or more. And there's some conferences that before have not been able to fill the spot, and somebody else will step in.
Yeah, and I guess the Rose is the Big Ten and the Pac-12, so that doesn't really have to change. I mean, it'd just be weird that USC or UCLA would be representing the Big Ten in that scenario. But, yeah, I guess on paper that doesn't really have to change, even if the Big Ten's going to be shuffling lineups. Now, if the Pac-12 obviously disintegrated or did not exists anymore for some reason, although plenty of media guys are saying otherwise today, and then accusing people of being the ones that are saying it. It's very weird how all this is going on Twitter. But I guess if something were to drastically change, then that would change how the Rose Bowl is selected. But yeah, I guess I'm with these guys that that's probably not the most important thing at the moment. I think that's probably just something that gets figured out as time goes by, and you kind of figure out who's actually where first, because you can go solve it right now, but what does solving it do right now if teams are just going to leave here in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months or in a couple of years? Then what was the point?
I think the bigger question about the bowl system is, say that we do get the 12-team playoff, which every day I wake up and wonder if that's ever going to actually happen, but say we do get a 12-team playoff. And some of those are obviously going to have to be home games the first week based on the higher seed because you can't just go to neutral site 3 weeks in a row. Well, what happens to the bowl system? Does the bowl system become less valuable to everybody else because the 12-team playoff now is the dominant thing?
Some of the bowls will be a part of the playoff.
Yeah, but I mean, on the lower rung ones, like what happens? Does that?
Yeah, but here's my thought on that: is like how many? But how do you do that though? Did you win 4 bowl games on the way to your national title? Like, did you win the Sun in the first round, and you won the Peach in the second, and you won the Cotton in the semis, and then you won the Rose in the national title? Like, that's what doesn't make any sense to me, for a variety of reasons. So yeah, I mean, they would be a part of the semis, as it already, is set up like that, but how would you do that overall? So, yeah, I mean, it depends. That's the thing. These are questions that you can't really answer right now because we don't know what it's going to look like. No. I mean, is there a Super 2?
Maybe it's not so much the bowl games as the site that's called the Citrus Bowl or called the Cotton Bowl or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, because, we won the Cotton, Sugar, Peach, and Rose all in the same year. Yeah. It's like, okay, and then a bunch of teams just didn't get to play in bowl games because you played in 4 of them. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But while that doesn't make any sense, nothing really makes sense right now because we have no idea what it's going to look like. So if there is a Super 2 that breaks off, how do they break off? What do they break off into? Are they tethered somewhat? Are they completely untethered from whoever else is remaining, the majority of schools that are out there? Because, something's got to give, and I don't think you're going to be I don't know. There's so many questions that come with that. Like, what does their playoff look like? I mean, how many teams are invited to that playoff? What happens to teams in those 2 leagues if they don't get invited to whatever the playoff setup would be? Do they have their own, like, you know what I'm saying?
They're all going to – there's going to be a chart, a grid, like an Excel file. You get assigned to bowl games and stuff. You're talking about if you're the Big 12 and you don't have somebody make it to the college football playoff.
No, I'm saying if there's two leagues that are going off and doing their own thing and they're going to crown their national champion or whatever the Super League is going to do, are they involved in the playoff with the other conferences, or is this their own exclusive thing like people seem to think that they're moving towards?
Oh, I would think they think it's their own exclusive thing, and they'll negotiate the name of the damn title games and semifinals on their own.
So then
we're looking at so many things that may never happen.
Right, which is basically what I said is why we need more information. But if we're going to sit here and think about it for a second, if you are two conferences, you're the Big Ten and the SEC, you go off to do your own thing. Are you going to play a non-Super 2 or whatever conference in the Chili's Bowl? Or do you only have your teams playing in those types of games, or is the other ones playing those types of – that's what I'm saying.
You cannot play the teams in the Super 2, in my opinion, if they're playing for their own championship.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, if you're in the Super 2, what does their postseason look like? Okay, not everybody's making the postseason. So what teams left out? Are they playing in the San Antonio Bowl?
Whatever bowl games want to align with them.
Right. So that's the question is, what would that even look like? What would bowl games even do? What would bowl games even matter? What would, there's just way too many questions to know for sure.
The Rose Bowl has been around forever, of course. The first time I think it was a Big Ten and Pac-12, whatever it was called in 1947. I don't care what, Pac-8, whatever. From 1947 all the way until Miami's throttled Nebraska in 2002 year, the 2001 season, it was always Big Ten, Pac-12. From that time, there have been lots of hits and misses. Like TCU played Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. You've had teams outside of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, but they've kind of gone back to that. 2020 season, Alabama played Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl. Last year, of course, it was Ohio State. Utah, so it was back to the Big Ten, Pac-12. So they've had, like Oklahoma, Georgia, semifinal game, Rose Bowl. It's been still, for the most part, it's always about the Big Ten and the Pac-12 with a few exceptions. Oregon, Florida State in 15 was a Rose Bowl game. When we come...
I know you don't want to speculate too much, but that's also what the entire premise of realignment is all speculation. All of what we've talked about is speculation. So I know that's a bit farther out.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying is that is like a bowl, like a 1,000 paper clips that you cannot keep. That it's a great question. It's a great scenario. If you are a part of the Super 2, you're going to want to align yourself to bowl games. And if those bowl games are a part of the Super 2 conference, whether it's a championship or the 5th and 6th and 7th ranked teams, those other conferences, I guess, are going to be left out of those bowl games.
Right. So if you're not a part of those two conferences, you can't play in the Rose Bowl anymore. Well, that's what's fascinating about it is you got to think about it that way is like how much cooperation would there even be going on? Who loses out entirely on parts of history because of money grabs and corporations and things like that is, if you're the Rose Bowl and all of a sudden – you've been Pac-12, Big Ten, and all of a sudden the Big Ten is joining this own separate thing with one other conference. The Pac-12's in this other thing. Is there crossover? I wouldn't want to have crossover.
No.
So there's not that. So then all of a sudden you got bowl games that are choosing. Like that's what's fascinating.
To me, the Big Ten will take over the Rose Bowl.
Okay. And the Pac-12 just too bad.
And we read the two comments earlier about how powerful they are. But if the Pac-12 dissolves, it won't matter. But I would think that, that's to me why you're Washington and you're Stanford or whoever, you're Oregon, you want to have that connection, the possibility of playing in the Rose Bowl. But, man, there's so much. It's so convoluted, it's crazy. We got to take a break. 440, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.